Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Empowered for Wisdom. Today, I wanted to share the topic of interpreting church. So, at first instance, what does it even mean? What does church mean, actually? We always, perhaps in the Christian world or in the religious world, sometimes there's a lot of these terms that if we're not, that we may not be familiar of at first. So, what is church prima facie at first instance? So it can be described as a building, facility, location, a school, institution, or even a group. All right. So some of the things that's involved in the church, so to speak, is that a building or facility requires property maintenance. Yeah, I know my camera is kind of blocking the screen. It says applied mechanics on the top. So a school enrolls a set numbers of students. A membership or group necessitates members. An institution or organization requires governance. So, however, some of the things that may be involved in a church, or in general, if we try to make a church a business, for instance, or an institution, is that monopoly. Like we all know that game that we played before or heard of, where you're a character and then you try to get as much as property in the game and people have to pay rent. So the thing with that is that we're trying to, as we build an organization, it seems that we want control of, that may not be the right word, but we kind of need people's attention or people's resources to use our services. All right. And we understand that money and morality are equally influential behavioral factors that come into play. So we know in a business or in life, we know that we work our jobs to pay bills, for instance, and that we've been told by our parents and influenced by society and norms to act a certain way. And we even have our certain preferences. So these things impact the use of our time and the way we think. In Matthew 6:24, it says that no one can serve two masters. Oh yeah, so this whole presentation will be based on the Holy Bible, but we'll acknowledge different factors too beyond the Christian world. So no one can serve two masters. The person will hate one master and love the other, or will follow one master and refuse to follow the other. You cannot serve both God and worldly riches. So some things it may be that we may not even want to do them, but it's kind of required to do, like our jobs. But there may be this conflict that we have between, like, if we can even say our passion. What would we do if it weren't for money? Would it be something else? So this might beg the question, is church multi-dimensional? Because we kind of, in a sense, we tend to limit it. So sometimes it may be perceived that God or church or religion is against science. But in Romans 1:20, it states that for his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. And we know, like, scientifically speaking, that atoms, the universe, like, comprises of atoms that are naked, that are invisible to our naked eye. And as we can see from the picture of the atom on our left, we can't see these things. These things are invisible, and the Bible addresses these, or at least one interpretation is that both religion and science can work hand in hand instead of conflicting. So in Proverbs 15:3, it says, it's just that God is omnipresent. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on evil and good. And Mark 9:38-41 speaks about, may speak about how we handle denominations, because we know there's different denominations in Christianity. So it says, teacher said, it was a parable. Teacher said, John, we saw, or testimony, we saw someone driving out demons in your name, and we told him to stop because he's not one of us. Do not stop him, Jesus said, for no one who does a miracle in my name can in the next moment say anything bad about me. For whoever is not against us is for us. Truly I tell you, anyone who gives you a cup of water in my name, because you belong to the Messiah, will certainly not lose their reward. So sometimes we may get caught up in different practices of that organization, of that culture, of that church, or that way of living. But then we kind of don't respect what they're doing, even though we both have the same goal. It just, the sense of unfamiliarity throws us off, and we may think that people are against us. So it might create like some negative perceptions or bias onto them, which may not actually be true. So some further considerations for church can be listed in Romans 14:5, where it states that one person regards one day as better or more important than another, while another regards every day the same as any other. Let everyone be convinced, assured, satisfied in his own mind. So with church, we know that it's kind of associated with Sabbath. So which speaks about like having a holy day for resting. And we tend to say that, oh, if a person doesn't go to church, he's like unholy. But we can see from this verse, people can have their own opinions and can say, perhaps there's a universal Sabbath. It may not just be one day. Some people can think that, yeah, every day is holy. We should treat every day equally, and that's all right. So in 1 Timothy 5:8, it says, if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his household, he is denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Sometimes we may, so I think this really just shows you can't just be a Sunday Christian, but I mean, this is just one interpretation of it. Because we may act a certain way, we may act worse throughout the week. But on Sunday, we're just a different person. We try to be as nice as possible. We try to compensate for our mistakes. But we know that whether it be our household or workplaces or wherever we're going to, our place of residence or anywhere that we have effect on, there's a sense of accountability in those different places. So another association of church can be the nation, where it says, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people whom he has chosen for his own inheritance. We know that if there's cooperation in the government with citizens, people obey the law, there's less crime. So we know that there may be more prosperity and social harmony if these things are addressed, these things are taken into account, and citizens and authorities, they work towards a common goal where there may be less violence and peace for the nation. So we do have this kind of responsibility, though, as citizens to our country. So it also states that in First Corinthians that you realize, in Message version, you realize, don't you, that you are the temple of God and God himself is present in you. No one will get by with vandalizing God's temple. You can be sure of that, because God's temple is sacred and you, remember, are the temple. Sometimes we say, let's go over there because that place is sacred. That may be a church, place of sanctuary. So although you can also say that, sometimes we need to point at ourselves that church may, in a metaphorical sense, can be ourselves. So we need to treat it with kind of a sense of purity and importance. Instead of kind of pointing outside, some things may be internal. So we know that, for example, if we eat junk food every single time, of course there are cheat days, but we know that there's like physical, it may not be good physically. You may get a bunch of pimples. We may feel easily fatigued if we always eat unhealthy food. If we don't take care of our body, if we don't do exercise, we know what that does, and some of the negative things, how it negatively impacts our health. So even our lives and our bodies can be taken care of, that we need to be faithful stewards of and to be responsible. Finally, in Romans 12:4-5, it states that our bodies are made up of many different parts. None of these parts have the same use. There are many people who belong to Christ, and yet we are one body, which is Christ. We are all different, but we depend on each other. So bodies can also refer to different departments, can refer to different countries in a macro sense, that quite similar to on our previous slide where we talk about whoever is not who is for us is not against us. So in actuality, there are many departments and different ways that we can reach out to people, and we belong in the same group. Actually, it's not like this church is here or this business is here, this organization here, so we can't work with others, we can't partner with others. We all have similar goals, whether it be in different countries or in the organization. There's different departments. We know that there's a sense of liaison that needs to be worked towards, so we can execute the goal in more efficiently and to make use of the resources, to share the resources. So if we kind of imagine it to be a jigsaw puzzle, and church is kind of this big concept, if we combine it, then this can be in the acronym of Christ as the cornerstone. So that can be in the embodiment of humility, of holiness, all these fruitful values that we can learn from Christ. We know that we have an obligation in our household. So in our separate homes, in our families, we need to strive for unity with different people. Reflection is more individual. Community, we have a duty to reach out to other people, to be a good role model in our community. And humanity, which goes beyond. There's kind of this responsibility now with social media. We're representing more than ourselves, as people can kind of view our profile and we haven't even met them. So in a sense, social media can be a church too. If we take church as like different elements and we combine them together, that can be one aspect of church, is social media. So in summary, from the things at the beginning where we talked about church can be recognized as a building, location, church may also refer to a collective pool of entities. So it's the combination of everything instead of a singular source, because extremities would be resolved and contention mitigated among competitors. We may have a sense of that a separate of seclusion if we kind of divide that I'm a church here and that's a church there, or this is my business, this is my organization, that's their organization. Yeah, that can be true too, but it may seem that endorsing inclusivity promotes mutual understanding with partnerships. We kind of have this same goal. So if we kind of take the example of the earth, we know that there's different countries, and to make like a global effort to solve a problem easily, or more effectively. We kind of need to strive to work with as much as people as possible. So, for example, there's like the World Health Organization or the United Nations. They try to gain consensus among different nations. People have different expectations and different regulations and laws. So we kind of need to mediate and discuss with different opinions to kind of have a better solution. It can be tested with disagreement, and this actually builds better solutions. So such as like combining pooled resources to come up with vaccines, to come up with laws, to come up with humanitarian solutions. So this may be for the benefit of everyone. So thank you again for listening. I'm glad to hear your thoughts. Take care.